Welcome to Rob Schmitt tonight. 1 year ago, Joe Biden was running for re-election. The media was covering his dementia and fear-mongering the potential return of Trump as Americans swelled with nostalgia for his far more competent administration. Then in June, Joe Biden debated Trump, and the Democrat Party ousted him immediately, choosing to witness a different disaster in Kamala Harris. Biden basically disappeared toward the end of his presidency. We've seen glimpses of him since, fumbling through speeches to snag a quick $300 grand. But this week, the crooked old man sat down with the BBC for a 30-minute interview. Biden started by claiming that Trump is a threat to freedom and democracy and NATO because he's refusing to fund an endless war in Ukraine. Even the BBC host, hand-selected to give an easy interview here, couldn't help but admit that Trump does have a point when he calls out NATO and Europe for freeloading off American wealth and strength.
You know what they're saying in this administration. The US Defense Secretary talks about European freeloading. The Vice President talks about your country, the United States, bailing out Europe. There's an anger there. Have they not got a point?
No, they don't have a point.
No, they don't have a point. They don't have a point? Trump doesn't have a point? The Europeans, as we all know, hide behind our military and thank us with tariffs and trade barriers to artificially protect their lazy economies and subsidize their wealth with ours. I'd say it's pretty clear that Trump has a point. If the BBC says he has a point, he probably does. Biden responded to all of this by then talking about 9/11.
Well, of all the NATO nations, almost all of them are 2% right now. But what they've done is, when we were attacked, what happened on 9/11? They all responded, support us. Look, imagine there being no NATO.
So Biden touting the meager assistance that we received after 9/11 as proof of why NATO is so important. So why are they even talking about this? Well, it's all about Ukraine, of course, which isn't even a NATO country. But they tell us it's also not about Ukraine, why we've spent $200 billion there. It's about NATO nations near Ukraine. Who would that be? Well, that would be Poland. Let's do a comparison. Let's go back to 2001, 9/11, the United States gets hit and we quickly invade Afghanistan. At that point, how important was NATO? How much help was Poland when we went into Afghanistan? Well, the Poles sent 300 troops. That's how important NATO is to us. 300 troops. We sent thousands, tens of thousands. Fast forward 20 years, Russia invades Ukraine, making Poland nervous. We cover 3/4 of the cost of a war against Russia. And that right there is NATO in a nutshell. We are NATO. The rest are just along for the ride, contributing marginally at best. But not in Joe Biden's eyes, of course, who claimed that most countries are now close to paying 2% of their NATO obligations, without admitting that Trump is actually the reason that even that is happening. Biden says world leaders have told him they're terrified that Trump's going to end NATO. What they really mean is that they're terrified they're going to have to start funding their own militaries. And this interview comes as the incompetence of Biden's administration still lingers in our country. America is in the midst of an air traffic crisis right now between Obama diversity requirements that Trump ended and then Biden restarted to failing equipment. Evidence shows the last administration, the Biden administration, was focused on every single possible thing except keeping planes in the sky. Remember when they changed the word cockpit to become gender neutral? Remember when Biden appointed this guy to run the FAA?
You ever flown a plane?
Thank you for the question, Senator. No, I have never flown a plane.
So you weren't a military pilot or a commercial airline pilot?
No, Senator.
Have you ever worked for an airline?
No, Senator.
Have you ever worked as an air traffic controller?
No, Senator.
You ever worked for a company that manufactures airplanes?
No, Senator.
You ever worked for a company that fixes airplanes?
No, Senator.
I think he managed an airport, but the real reason he got the job is he was the right color. There are now reports of frequent equipment failures that are popping up. More of the damage of the last administration. These are Some whack-a-mole games that this new administration is going to have to take out. NBC reports air traffic outages like last week's at Newark at least 8 times in recent months. Talk about setting up the new administration to fail. An FAA study from 2 years ago determined that 105 of the 138 systems were either unsustainable or potentially unsustainable. Nobody in the Biden administration cared as this all collapsed in the last few years. All that mattered was focus grouped political grifts. Who cares about actually running the country and keeping planes in the sky? This should be the end of Pete Buttigieg's career. Remember, he disappeared to play Mr. Mom when our supply chains collapsed during COVID, the transportation secretary, and now you have this. More of Biden's disaster revealed in an Inspector General report on Biden's Gaza pier. The $250 million pier that Joe Biden built in Gaza to pander for votes in Michigan was only operational for 20 days. They spent $250 million to build one pier, and it lasted 20 days. We paid $11 million a day for the people of Gaza to have a pier to help people who'd love to see our country explode, to people who chant, dreaming about our country exploding. More than 60 of our service members were injured working on this pending disaster, which has now become a metaphor for Biden's term in office. You know, everybody's reporting the same stories, the same spin. You turn the channel, it's always the same. But not us. We're different. We report the real news. No spin, just the facts. Turn to us, and you won't turn back.
Tune in to Rob Schmitt tonight on Newsmax.